Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again for our FOF. And thanks for being in person. Today there is nobody on Zoom, so I hope somebody joins a little later. So I think everybody is here today. So we have Abhishek Goenka from our research team who tracks chemicals, healthcare, and agri-inputs. So we thought since the Kharif sowing season has just begun, it will be interesting to look at this topic. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thanks, Ronak. Good evening, everyone. So I hope everyone has taken a note of these upcoming FOF dates. So today we are going to look at not so very fancy agriculture sector, and the topic for today is Agri-Inputs Industry. We'll divide this topic into three subsegments: fertilizers, agrochemicals, and seeds. We'll look at each of them one by one. So it is said that if agriculture goes wrong, nothing else will go right. These are the words of M.S. Swaminathan, who is the father of Green Revolution in India, and probably very apt for an agrarian economy like India. The reason is almost 58% of the population even today depends their livelihood on various forms of agricultural activities. And that is very crucial not only for the country's food security, but also for the growth of rural sector. If we see the market size of global market size of fertilizers and agrochemicals, it is close to $215 billion, where India's share is inching up. It today stands at 12%, whereas China is leading at 30%. Rising population, recently we have heard that India has become the most populous nation, and hence that is also driving the demand of food grains overall. So we'll look at the two major agricultural seasons in India. The first one is Kharif season, which is also known as a rainy season, where the crops are sown from April to September month. So these are basically the crops which require high requirement of water. So mainly we see paddy and cotton are the crops which are grown during the Kharif season. The second season is the Rabi season, also known as a winter crop season, where the sowing is done from October to April. Wheat and pulses are the main crops here. So this is a chart on total arable land, basically where agricultural activity is being conducted today. So if we see this chart, somewhere in 1990, the figures have come down from 163 million hectares of land. It has now come down to 156 hectares of land somewhere in 2015. And probably this is a cause of worry as the overall food requirement, which is increasing as the population increases, now it needs to be met from the less remaining available land. So this chart depicts the area which is under irrigation. If we see over the last 15 years, the total irrigated land, which was around 60 million hectares in 2006, it has now grown to 68 million hectares in 2017, which is a promising trend. So government is taking a lot of initiatives to increase the area under irrigation, and which has shown positive results. Apart from this, government plans to undertake over 250 new irrigation projects, which has got a potential to irrigate roughly around 20 million of additional land, 20 million hectares of additional land. So basically, the agricultural produce is the farmer's revenue, and which is uncertain given the monsoon erratic season. So what is in control of the farmers is the overall cost of farming, which can decide his true earnings for a season. So overall agricultural cost can be divided into two parts. One is agri input cost, which is nothing but the raw materials part. Second is the operating cost. Within agri inputs, fertilizer forms the largest cost component, roughly around 50% of the overall agri input cost. Agrochemicals accounts for 20% of total agri input cost for farmers, and seeds is close to 30%. Within the operating cost, it includes human labor, machinery, and irrigation charges. Human labor costs are the largest component for Indian farmers, who still depend a lot on the human labor as against the agrochemicals. So we'll look at fertilizer segment first. So the total consumption requirement of India annually is close to 64 million tons. And the types of fertilizers are basically urea and non-urea. Roughly 20% of both the categories are being imported by India. Within non-urea, we can classify the fertilizer into three segments. One is DAP, which is nothing but the diammonium phosphate. Second is complex non-urea fertilizer. Third is sulfuric-based fertilizer. We'll see the classification in detail. So a particular type of fertilizer can be identified by its ingredient. Fertilizer contains mainly three nutrients in the order of N, P, K. N stands for nitrogen, P stands for phosphorus, and K stands for potassium. So each bag of fertilizer will contain these numbers, and these nutrients are nothing but the percentage of weight of that particular bag. So if you look at this picture, on the left hand side is the urea bag, which contains 46% nitrogen and 0% component of P and 0% component of K. Whereas on the right hand side, the numbers are 10, 26, 26. So 10% is nitrogen, 26% is phosphorus, and another 26% is potassium. So basically the properties of each of these ingredients are, so nitrogen provides rich green in color, which provides a leafy growth to the crop. Phosphorus focuses the energy on the strong root development of the crop, and potassium enhances the overall growth of the plant. So we look at characteristics of fertilizer. So as we said, urea only contains nitrogen. So among the NPK, 46% is generally nitrogen in a urea bag, whereas potassium and phosphorus is 0% each. Within non-urea, DAP contains 18% nitrogen, 46% phosphate, and 0% potassium. In case of complex, it contains all the three elements, N, P, and K. In case of sulfuric acid, there is a fourth element, which is nothing but the sulfuric acid. If you see the cost difference today, so urea bag is coming close to 250 rupees per 50 kg bag, and the subsidy amount is almost 10x, which is 2,500. So definitely the selling price is far lower than the cost, and hence the subsidy element. In case of DAP, the cost of bag is close to 1,200 rupees per 50 kg bag, and the subsidy amount is almost similar to urea, which is 2,500 per 50 kg bag. As far as the manufacturing process is concerned, so urea is far simpler. Basically, you need nitrogen, which is mixed with hydrogen from natural gas, and it is created ammonia to come at the final product of urea. Whereas in non-urea, you need two more chemical elements, which is the phosphoric acid and the sulfuric acid. So this is the global fertilizer industry. If we see the left-hand side chart, so close to 60% of the nutrient contained by the fertilizers are nitrogen-based fertilizers. Phosphorus and potassium are close to 20% each. As far as the last 10 years growth is concerned, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, they have grown at very decimal amount of 1 and 2% each. In terms of country, so China leads the consumption of fertilizers, followed by India and US. So industry is very concentrated among the few countries, China, India, and US, which forms the major composition of fertilizer consumption. These are the growth figures, 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year of urea and non-urea. So urea, if you see, 10-year growth is close to 1.4%, whereas 3-year and 5-year is slightly negative. As compared to that, the DAP has grown much better than urea, 6.8% for 3 years and 2.2% for the last 10 years. Similarly, SSP, which is sulfuric-based acid, sulfuric-based fertilizers, it has grown at 4.2% for 10 years and negative growth for 3 and 5 years period. MOP-based fertilizer, which is nothing but the potassium, it has grown 3.4% for 3 years and 7.4% for 5 years. So this is raw material requirement for each category of fertilizers. So as we have seen, natural gas is a major component for both urea and non-urea. So roughly 70% of the fertilizer cost is natural gas, which is imported by India. Apart from this, if we see the non-urea based fertilizers, so phosphoric acid, we are importing around 50%, 55% of the demand. Ammonia again is imported, and phosphate rock is 80 to 90% of the demand is met by import. So most of the raw material parts are concerned is being imported from various geographies. So these are some of the reforms which has helped the sector in the recent years. The recent one is neem coating of urea. So what used to happen is a lot of this urea was being illegally transferred to the chemical industries for usage because a lot of the subsidies are available. So what government has done is it is made compulsory that you need to neem coat the urea so that it can't be used for other chemical industries. So that has helped in utilizing the urea only for the agriculture purpose. Second is they have reduced the size bag from 50 kg to 45 kg. Because a lot of time these farmers are unaware and they used to sprinkle the fertilizers in a haphazard manner. So be it a 45 kg bag or a 50 kg, they used to waste a lot of time these extra 5 kg bags. So the same output is now being, the results are achieved with a 45 kg bag. So that has helped in some sort of savings. Pre-export. So far India doesn't export, although we are importing both category of urea, but it has allowed this category, non-urea specifically, okay, you can start exporting going forward. So we might see some kind of traction, especially in the non-urea, which is a non-regulated sector, to start showing some export numbers. Urea prices are largely uniform across the country, but government has made uniform all the tax receipt rates across the country so that people can't buy from particular state and misuse in other states. And last is the new urea investment policy, where they will be coming up with the new plants. So Chambal, Matrix fertilizer and few more are in stage to get these plants. So we'll look at some of these non-government factors. So coming on to climate, India is likely to witness rising temperatures with the global warming. Such climate changes will gradually increase pest population and hurting the global crop yields. Agri-Inputs companies need to address this with better solution and quality products, which should create huge opportunities in coming years. Rising food demand. So as we have seen recently, India's population has become the largest populated country in the world, which will lead to a 70% increase in food demand. Also, rising incomes in low and middle class segment is changing the India's food consumption pattern with more demand for fruits and vegetables. Third is labor shortage. So globally, if we see, India is having this labor cost advantage, which is a significant part of cost of cultivation. So that has helped in overall lowering the cost of agriculture, reduction in prices. Rising export markets. India's advantage of low cost production and skilled manpower should support the growth of Indian agrochemical exports. Last is political parties. So in India, we have seen during the election years, most of the times loan waivers or extra subsidies are allowed. So these things again work in the favor of the segment. Budgetary allocations. So if we see the last 5 years trajectory, crop insurance budget allocation has increased from 119 billion to 155 billion. Interest subsidy has increased from 115 billion to 181 billion. And PM Kisan Yojana, the overall budget allocation has increased from 12 billion to 680 billion. So if we just total up, it was close to 300 billion somewhere in 2019, which has now come close to 1,000 billions. So this figure has dramatically increased, and overall the budget is increasing, which augurs well for the sector. Nitrogen. So we'll look at all three ingredients. So Asia is the largest contributor when it comes to nitrogen, and within Asia, China and India are the major countries which produces nitrogen. Any change in action plans of so few of the companies are concentrated in both China and India, and any actions in demand and supply, it can create problem in the global fertilizer prices. Phosphatic fertilizers. Asia contributes close to 43% of the production, 53% of the production. And again, China, US and India are the leading producers. In terms of export market, so China influences the trade with almost 40% of the global trade coming out of China. whereas Brazil and India being the major importers. Potash fertilizers. So here Europe is leading in terms of overall production, followed by US and Asian region. Individual country-wise, if we see, Canada and Russia are the major producers of potash. India, Brazil and China are the major importers. So we look at few of the analysis of peer companies in this sector. Historically, urea-specific companies have struggled to grow their revenue. However, revenue growth has been excellent over the past 3 years, with increasing realizations and recovery in the global demand. So if you see, Coromandel is having 80% of its revenue coming from fertilizer, whereas 20% is coming from the crop protection chemicals. Players with P and K focused ingredients have seen better growth as they have a more diversified business. Coromandel and GSFC have seen double-digit revenue growth over the past decade due to a non-urea product portfolio. So non-urea is a segment where the prices are not controlled, so they are able to get the maximum benefit in a rising market. Margin trend. So this is EBITDA margin. Non-urea producers generally enjoy better margins. Diversified companies such as Coromandel and Deepak Fertilizer have better margins because their portfolio covers different segments apart from the fertilizers like agrochemicals, industrial chemicals and others. Chambal has gradually improved its margins over the past 5 years by discontinuing the non-core businesses and better non-urea trading exposure. Among the PSU companies like National Fertilizers, GSFC and RCF, they still struggle to improve their margins, mainly due to operational inefficiency and competition from private companies. So if you see globally, fertilizer companies have better margins than their Indian counterparts because these global companies are completely backward integrated and they have a global presence. So this is the ROE trend for last 5 years. Again, if you see Coromandel having a diversified business, have better ROE and rather more consistent ROE, whereas in case of Chambal, the ROE has improved over last 5 years. In case of others, National Fertilizer, GSFC and Deepak, the numbers are very volatile. Data days. So a core concern for this fertilizer segment is the delay in receiving the subsidies from the government. So urea companies such as RCF, NFL, which is National Fertilizers, and GSFC, which are PSU companies, they have receivable days piled as high as 6 months because subsidy contribution is a large share of their overall realization. In case of Coromandel, if you see, the days have reduced from 50 to almost 10 days now. So we look at agrochemicals segment. So basically, these are the chemicals which are used in the process of agriculture. Basically, these are chemical products and not naturally derived, but man-made. So this chemical act as a protector, protecting the crops from pests. It could be weeds, insects, etc. And they try to enhance the overall crop yield. So the types of agrochemicals, first is insecticides. So these are the chemicals used to protect crops from insects by either killing them or preventing the attack on the crop. Second is fungicides. These are the chemicals which prevent or destroy the growth of fungus. India being a tropical country, so there is a humid climate, there are always chances that fungus material gets developed around the plant. So fungicides helps to tackle those fungus. Herbicides. So these are also known as weed killer. So these are the weeds are the substances that unwantedly grow around the plants. So chemicals are used to control the unwanted stuffs which specifically grows during the rainy season. The weeds, when grown in length and occupy space, they don't allow the sunlight to reach to the main plant and they act as an obstacle for the crop growth. We look at the value chain of agrochemicals. So this value chain is very similar to a pharma industry where there is a KSM, which is a key starting material, which starts from the value chain, and the next process is API, and from API we move to the final formulation. So similarly here, the RM supplier will supply the intermediates to a company which is active ingredients manufacturer who supplies AI to formulator. A formulator could be UPL, Dhanuka, or etc. Then he will supply the goods to distributor, and then the distributor supplies to the retailer, which is closer to the farmer. So this is the breakup of different types of chemicals used globally. So if you see, the percentage of herbicides have remained high, and as far as 2017 is concerned, herbicides is closely 50% of the overall agrochemicals used in percentage, followed by fungicides, which is close to 27%, and insecticides, which is close to 25%. Whereas in India, if you see, insecticides is the one which is having a largest consumption as against the herbicides. So one reason is herbicides where the weeds are developed unwantedly. So people use labor, which is very cheap in India, rather than using the agrochemicals. However, if we see this percentage over the years, now labor is becoming slightly costlier, and hence herbicides have humongous growth in terms of percentage growth. Paddy and the cotton are the main crops which dominate the domestic market in agrochemicals. So roughly 60% of the agrochemicals which is being used is used for these two crops. So consolidation has been a key driver in the global agrochemical market in past few years. So if you see the top 6 companies globally, they account closely 70% of the market share in the overall agrochem market. Post the deal of UPL acquiring Arysta, it has now become the 6th largest agrochemical player in the world. So rising product development cost and competition has led to this global consolidation. Also, the regulatory standards to develop new products have become more and more stringent over the years, resulting in higher R&D expenditure for the innovators. The industry is seeing increasing competition from low-cost generic players. India's contribution has doubled from 4% in 2010 to almost 9% in 2019. Similarly, China's contribution has moved up from 18% to 27%, which is the leading consumer. So these are just the timelines which shows the overall R&D process has grown over the years from 8 years for developing a molecule to almost 11 years in 2014. So China remains a dominant player in the agrochemical industry. However, if you see the chart, agrochemical production in China has peaked in 2016 and it has declined thereafter. Few of the reasons are the tightening of environmental compliances from 2013 onward. The Chinese agrochem industry has faced multiple disruptions, environmental inspections, and closures. Over the last decade, Chinese agrochem production, which rose from 2.8 million metric tons in 2011, it has reached a peak of 3.8 million metric tons in 2016, and since then it has declined to 2.0 million metric tons in 2019. So this has been the timeline of various events which has led to this decline in overall consumption. So in 2013, the air pollution department had came with stringent regulation, which led to strict laws and closure of chemical factories in China. In 2015, there was an implementation of a new environmental protection law. And in 2017, compulsory inspections were started across the country. So this was an act by central government. In 2018, state-wise policies have come on banning the new chemical parks. So these are few of the reasons which has led to this overall reduction in the chemical industry in China. So if we see, the industry can be subdivided into various groups. Innovators are the big MNC who develop new molecules. It includes names like DuPont, Syngenta, Bayer, BASF, FMC, etc. After this, the second category is the generics category, which includes names like Adama, UPL, Sumitomo, etc. And then there are smaller players who offer specialized services and focus towards more R&D and the other key developments. So overall, if you see, in recent years, capex by 10 Indian listed companies is close to 41 billion rupees in last 5 years, from FY17 to FY21. These investments are targeted at catering to domestic as well as both UPL and PI have spent aggressively, although UPL is not included in the chart, but they are more into inorganic. PI has done more organic expansion. Per capita consumption. So India is a leading producer for rice, wheat and cotton. However, the area treated under agrochemical remains very low if you compare with global averages. So 35 to 40% of the total agriculture area is only treated with agrochemicals today. If you see the share of total agricultural output, India contributes almost 12% of agricultural output in the world. But the share of global pesticides is just 1%. Top 5 states, AP, Punjab, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Gujarat, they consume more than 60% of the total agrochemicals in India. So some of the advantages that India has versus global peers, if you compare the labor cost on the left-hand side, so India remains the lowest in terms of labor cost if you compare with the developing world and the developed countries. On the power front, we are cheaper than other countries, but when compared with China, we are 20% higher. So India is having a specific regulation with regards to import of chemical pesticides under the Insecticides Act 1968. So basically, Section 9(3) of the Insecticides Act, which says if Indian companies have to import either a formulation which is the final good or any technical which is the intermediate, they need to file this registration under Section 9(3). So these 9(3) regulations are concerned with the molecules which are new to the country. So any first-time importer will be filing their guidelines under 9(3). Whereas if it's a repeat molecule, which is also known as Me Too registration, that guidelines needs to be followed is under Section 9(4). So these are the timelines. So Section 9(3), which is, since it's a new molecule, we don't know its side effects. So documentation, various trials needs to be conducted, and the registration is issued in a period of 12 to 36 months. It's more time consuming, whereas 9(4), which is a Me Too registration, since the molecule is already into use, it takes around 6 months of time. So we look at the revenue trend of few companies in agrochemical sector. So most of the companies have delivered positive growth over a past decade, but companies with large export, such as UPL and PI, they have continued to deliver double-digit sales growth. Similarly, growth for Bayer, Rallis and Dhanuka, it has been affected largely by their only domestic presence and hence large dependence on the monsoon. In case of PI, the CSM segment, custom synthesis segment, and in case of UPL, their recent acquisitions, that has provided exposure to multiple regions and different product offerings. EBITDA margin again is driven by exposure to exports to a large segment. Margins are much higher for PI and UPL because of higher export contribution at 70% and 80% respectively. Their margin range has remained closer to 20% over the last 5 years. Export-driven companies have higher margin than many global innovators, mainly due to the low cost of production. Rallis has seen a continuous decline in margins, while Dhanuka margins have been volatile. ROE trend. So agrochemical companies in general enjoys healthy and rather more stable return ratios when compared with fertilizer companies. Agrochem companies have limited intervention from the government, and companies have ROE of more than 15% and going as high as 25% in few years. fixed asset turnover. Asset-light companies have better fixed asset turnover. So if you see Bayer and Dhanuka, where the fixed asset turnover is as high as 7-8 times, is due to the outsourcing of formulations manufacturing. Whereas in case of PI and UPL, they have a lower asset turnover due to backward integration in intermediates and technicals. Dhanuka Agritech relies highly on the in-licensing of molecules by having tie-up with global innovators. So this is a few comparisons between both of this segment. So if you see the nature of business, so fertilizers basically provides nutrients to the plant, whereas the job of agrochemical is to protect the plants from pests, insects or weeds. In terms of regulations, urea is fully controlled by the government, whereas non-urea is partially controlled. In case of agrochemicals, it is although regulated under the Insecticides Act, but there is no pricing control. Raw material sourcing, so natural gas is largely imported. In case of non-urea, potash, phosphoric acid and ammonia, all are imported to the extent of 100%, 80% and 90%. Raw material for agrochemicals, so the sourcing is done by individual companies with some dependency on China, which is reducing year by year. In case of fertilizer, so we don't export, it's a 100% domestic market. However, government has now allowed exports for non-urea, so we may see some increase in export in the coming years. In case of agrochemicals, so 50% of the revenue comes from exports. Demand and supply situation in export market plays an important role for the growth. Role of monsoon. In case of fertilizers, so it has a limited impact because the sowing has to be done before the monsoon starts. Whereas in case of agrochemicals, it is highly dependent on the monsoon, and hence the demand is largely a function of monsoon. Competition. So urea is having a low competition as prices are regulated and about 20% is still imported. Similarly, in case of non-urea, there are very, very few players and hence it's a limited competition segment. Whereas in agrochemicals, the competition is high, a share of unorganized sector is high, branding of products, educating the farmer and bringing new product offerings plays a very important role here. Some of the risks and concerns for the agrochemical industry. So since only 50% of the land is under irrigation, sowing of crops and ultimately the demand for pesticides is highly monsoon dependent. So in times of low monsoon, agrochemical companies get impacted. The agriculture input industry has to offer more credit days to distributors, dealers and retailers along with higher inventories and some discounts. This is because most of the farmers have long-term relationship with the channel partners. So they offer longer credit days. Genetically modified seeds have extra features which resist the pest infections and they pose a threat to the pesticides usage. Agrochemicals exports are close to 50% and most companies are also sourcing around 20-25% of the raw materials outside India. Hence, currency risk remains a very high risk. Non-genuine illegal pesticides. So these are the products which are not registered or they are misbranded or trademark is infringed. The non-genuine industry is close to 20% of the market value. So we'll look at the seed segment, although there are not very many listed players here, but we'll see what are the major driving factors of this industry. So seed is an important input for the overall agricultural productivity. The efficacy of the other agricultural input, be it fertilizer, irrigation and pesticides. So seeds helps in enhancing the production of the overall crop growth. Quality of seed accounts for 20% of the agricultural productivity. In terms of global market size, so India is 5th largest, led by US, China, Brazil and Canada. The size of Indian seed sector is close to $5 billion, growing at 8 to 10% annually. Seed is a highly seasonal business. If you see in terms of revenue, most of the revenues, close to 70% of the annual revenue comes in Q1. The buying of seeds happen way before the monsoon starts. So in terms of all three segments, seed is the one which is less prone to monsoon, because most of the buying happens before June month. In terms of domination, so individual crop wise, if you see corn, soybean and rice, they account for around 60% of the global seeds market. So let's try and understand this terminology. So these are the two types of seeds available. In case of genetically modified seeds, the living organisms are used for better efficiency. So the DNA of the seed is purposefully modified. For example, if we see BT cotton, so cotton plant becomes resistant to different insects. BT is referred to bacteria. The full form is Bacillus thuringiensis. Although this could be harmful if it is used in higher quantity for the health of human. Whereas if we see hybrid seeds, there is no new gene which is transferred from any animal or insect or living organism. So what happens here is, so say there are two rice crops. One rice can grow with little water, and let's say the second one is more resistant with insects. So what happens here is cross-pollination happens, and the farmer gets a bit of both the advantages. And they are not harmful for the health of humans. In case of GM seeds, these are more regulated and restricted. So right now, the government has only allowed its use for the cotton crop. The GM technology was developed by Monsanto, and they brought this technology in India in 2002. So they started charging royalty for its research, and the royalty used to be as high as rupees 1200 per bag, which has gradually come down to rupees 20 per bag. And recently, government has abolished the royalty element. However, what it has done is, it has benefited the overall cotton crop yield, and it has resulted in 3 times higher production of cotton. So if you see in terms of government regulation, so there are no restrictions on usage of hybrid seeds. So hybrid rice, hybrid maize and hybrid vegetables are profoundly used in this segment. Just to see how this industry works, so a seed company conducts various trials and surveys to understand the farmer's needs, how they can achieve more yield, what kind of seeds are required for increasing the production, and what is more effective with different pests and insects. So based on this, they start developing seeds with genetic, or it could be hybrid seeds. In case of hybrid, it takes around 7 to 10 years of research for developing a new seeds. And once a new seed is developed, they need to undergo ICR government trials for at least 3 years. All technical processes are checked, and after trials are done, they can launch the seeds on a pilot basis. A group of farmers needs to test it, and based on their satisfactory response, they can start distributing and selling commercially in the market. So these are different stages of how a seed is commercially launched. Breeder is a category where basically experiments and research are carried out on the seeds. A foundation is one which is ready but still not available in the market. So the cultivation happens at a very local level or on a pilot basis. And finally, certified seeds are the one which is available in market for farmers. FDI, so 100% FDI is now allowed in seed segment under the automatic route for production and development of seeds. So this encourages infusion of foreign investment in the seed sector. This helps in developing more R&D activities and development of better varieties of seeds. We'll see what are the reasons for high barriers of entry in the seed sector. So we've seen significant R&D investment with long gestation cycle of 7 to 10 years. So it has become an entrance for newer players to commit huge capital in the segment. Also, one needs to have a wide distribution across India. In case of development of hybrid seed, the overall registration and getting an approval is a very, very complex process. And you need to have a high degree of credibility with the farmers as far as the branding is concerned. So, the global seeds market has been dominated by 5 to 6 players, which control close to 75% of the market. So M&A has been a trend since more than 2 decades, which has resulted into higher market share of bigger MNCs. So this M&A has helped the companies to gain size as well as entry into newer products and geographies. So if you see, there are a few large deals which has happened recently. In 2018, Bayer bought Monsanto with a deal worth of $63 billion, which is the biggest deal in the segment. Similarly, ChemChina acquired Syngenta for $43 billion, which is the second largest deal in the segment. So although there are not many big listed companies in this segment except Kaveri Seeds, so we'll just have a look at the journey and few parameters of this growth company. Mr. G.V. Bhaskar Rao started a seed production unit in 1986, and they have made continuous development since then. The company launched its first hybrid maize seed in 1997, and it got eventually listed in the exchange in 2007. 2008 was a milestone year for the company when they launched the first hybrid seed in the cotton named as Jadoo. In 2010, the Forbes listed the company best under $1 billion in Asia, and it got this award for 3 consecutive years in 2010, 11, and 12. And in 2014, company crossed the turnover of 1,000 crores. So Kaveri is a leading seed producer with very broad product portfolios that includes hybrids for cotton, corn, rice, bajar, and etc. I mean, they have a very unique business model in terms of offering different types of seeds. Over the years, if you see the revenue base, they have shifted more towards non-cotton business, which are less regulated, better margins, and higher growth. Farmers buy seeds much before monsoon so that they remain prepared for the sowing. So monsoon might not affect them too much in terms of overall sales in the segment, because most of the buying happens before the June quarter. So seeds as an industry is very, very less prone to monsoon. As far as the promoters are concerned, so they belong to Velema community, which is an agricultural community concentrated in Telangana region of Andhra Pradesh. This shows and explains the promoter passion for the seed business. The company has done 5 buybacks in past 6 years. So in India, if you see, most companies are very crops specific. So Indian companies have more focus towards cotton crops, whereas MNCs have targeted non-cotton crops. However, if we see the revenue breakup of Kaveri Seeds, so they are very, very diversified. Although cotton is close to 35%, at one time it used to be as high as 60% of the revenue. Maize 25%, hybrid rice 20%, and rice is 12%. So very diversified variety of seeds they have in the product portfolio. These are the cotton price chart for last 10 years. So it has been very volatile. However, the impact is higher for the companies which have higher share of cotton seeds as a portion of revenue. Whereas in case of Kaveri, if you see, we will see the margin which has been less volatile than this. For a general cotton seed manufacturer, if there is any fluctuation in pricing, 5% fluctuate could lead to as high as 8 to 10% impact on their bottom line. So this is Kaveri Seeds cotton revenue over the years. So cotton revenues have continuously come down. Revenues have come down almost half in last 7 years. And one reason is government regulating the cotton price since 2015 onwards. The cotton prices have now come down to rupees 750 per bag, which used to be 900 plus at one point. Another reason for this fall in revenue is India saw a drought in 2015 and 16, where the required rainfall was not received. So we've seen genetically modified seeds have that royalty element, whereas the hybrid paddy doesn't have any royalty. So all the seeds are manufactured by the company in-house. The revenues were constant till 2018 and have grown rapidly since then. So overall trajectory, if we see from 2007 to 15, company witnessed high cotton sales growth, and post that a growth trend has started in hybrid model for the company. Also, if we compare the paddy and the cotton crops, the land under cultivation for paddy is almost 4x than the cotton. So the growth could remain strong in the coming years for paddy. In terms of hybrid seeds utilization, so India's share in hybrid seed is still less than 10%, whereas China is almost having 90% of seeds consumption as hybrid. So there is a long way for India to increase its consumption in hybrid seeds. So the revenues have grown from 740 crores in 2016 to 1000 crores in 2023. Margin percentage, again, so very range bound numbers, although being a cyclical company. So they have been close to 25% margins over the years. In terms of ROE, except 1 year where drought was severe in 2017, they have been about 20% ROE over the years. So these are the few sources from where the data is gathered. That's it. Thanks. Happy to take question.
Thanks for the presentation. Have you done any channel checks on Nano DAP? Have farmers started using them, and any scalability on that?
So not the channel check that I have done so far, because we have more focused on the products which have been in use in high numbers, but not the specific one which you are referring to.
Hi, you said that in India the hybrid seeds share is only 10%.
In hybrid rye.
Hybrid, yeah. So what is the price difference between a regular seed and a hybrid seed? Because maybe that is the reason why farmer is not.
So in case of hybrid, I mean, if you see the development process also, which is very elongated, I mean, it takes around 7 to 8 years of overall production process. So a lot of companies are not keen to, devote that much of time or cost in that sense. So developing a new hybrid seeds is very challenging for any company. So probably the supply needs to be increased for overall consumption at the farmer level, or even the distribution at the farmer level to increase the overall consumption of hybrid. So, I mean, if you compare with China, yes, 10% versus 90% is a huge gap for any country. But if you see the last 5 years trajectory, it has increased from 6% to 10% now.
A regular seed and a cost of pesticide maybe would be higher.
Definitely.
Hybrid seed
Definitely.
without any pesticide.
But I think the awareness is also needs to be there, which is increasing, no doubt, year by year. But I mean, that shows huge runway for hybrid seeds as a growth path is concerned.
Yeah, and my second question was on the pesticide. You said that there are some innovators. So like in pharma industry, there is some patent period of maybe 15, 20 years. So is there a patent, like what is the duration of patent in pesticide before it becomes generic?
So the periods are very long. I mean, it could range from 10 to 20 years. And once this patent goes after the expiry, the generic players will start coming and enter the markets. So in terms of period, it's largely same. It doesn't deviate much.
Okay, and the last question was on the fertilizer side. So like there is not much of innovation. It's just the three chemicals like nitrogen.
Yes.
Right. So, and there is no really pricing power to extend. While it is not government control, but there is not a limit. You can charge a premium because there is no innovation. So is this the distribution muscle which will help for gaining the market share? And if yes, then are the commissions also capped? Like in a insurance industry, like the commissions are capped. So is this the same for the fertilizer industry where the commissions are kept for distribution, or how do they increase the market share basically?
So in urea, yeah, so there is no, there is nothing much a company can do in terms of innovation is concerned. Whereas in non-urea, if you see, companies have started developing complex fertilizers also, where they have some room, and now the exports market has also been started. Why urea companies have faced so much of challenges because of the inefficiency. A lot of these companies are PSU companies when they come to pure specific urea-based production. If you see all the private companies, they have a good mixture of specialized urea and also some sort of crop protection materials. So gradually, the efficient companies are moving from a pure urea-based player to more nutrient-based fertilizers.
Thank you.
So you're right that the differentiation happens predominantly on the distribution muscle and the connect with the farmers. How big of a distributor network you have, dealer network you have, how good your distributors and workforce are connected with the farmers. That is where you will differentiate. Yeah.
So, thank you for a very good presentation, and you have covered a very vast subject. So I have several questions, but let's see how much you'll be able to answer. So first of all, the urea business, which is a very large business. So in last 2-3 years, I've noticed that the margins of almost all companies have increased, the operating margins and EBITDA margins. So at global level, the prices of post-COVID, because of the logistics disruption and because of Ukraine war, etc., the price of urea shot up and ammonia as well around the world. The gas prices, which are input to produce urea, also went up. And then you are talking about there's a cap on the price in India on urea, right? And there is a huge subsidy, 90% subsidy on urea.
Yeah.
So I have not been able to understand how do urea companies make money. They also receive the subsidy payment very late.
Yes.
So there's a huge working capital involved. So how do they make money? And will we be able to, are they interested in expanding their capacity? Some companies have announced expansion of capacity. So can you explain how do they really make money? What are the levers to make money? And, if you can use maybe a DuPont model to understand how do they get the return on equity? What is the asset to turnover ratio? What is the margin? Some gas is available under administrative price mechanism, right, at subsidized rate. So can you please explain what the whole dynamics on this?
So what we saw, the subsidy numbers, that keeps on changing. So the number what we saw, 2,500 rupees per 50 kg of bag, was a subsidy at a particular point in time. So the subsidy amount keeps revising after every 6 months. So what drives this subsidy amount is two things. One is the demand and supply scenario. And second, as Rukun rightly pointed, the input cost. So what we have seen in last 2-3 years, the prices of all key raw materials, the natural gas, the ammonia, phosphoric acid, they've all gone high and now they're coming down. And that's the reason why this subsidy amount, what the sir said, is also coming down. So these numbers keep changing every 3 to 6 months. That's the reason why the companies will not make loss, because the government is also very agile in terms of tracking all the input prices, what is the demand and supply scenario in the global market, and based on which the subsidy amount is derived. In last 3 years, if you see, the subsidy disbursal is at its peak, and that's the reason the working capital days have also come down. So if you see the balance sheet health of all these, even urea specific companies, which are largely dependent on subsidies, have also rather improved because the government is releasing subsidies on time. Yeah.
Is there a fixed margin government wants to give to the companies, or return on equity, or what? How do they decide the subsidy?
I mean, I haven't come across any specific formula which the government has shared in public domain, or which is open to the companies to assume. I mean, it's a very there are variable moving parts which based on which the government decides, but there is no transparency as such. What could be a potential subsidy going forward if, let's say, the input cost has to rise. So that remains anonymous.
So I mean,
And that's the reason why these companies have seen such a volatile margin compared with non-urea companies, which have rather more range-bound margins. So probably that's the reason why only PSU companies are still there in the segment, because they have to do service also, social service also. Whereas the private companies have shifted to non-urea, to even the crop protection chemicals.
so the second question was in the agrochemicals area. Is there any subsidy or something, or it's total free market?
In agrochemicals, there is no subsidy. They do come under the regulation of Insecticides Act in terms of the pollution, in terms of toxicity of the raw materials that you use. But as far as the pricing is concerned, there is no
Total
regulation.
free market.
Yes.
And the third question is in the seed companies. So I'm not an expert in this area. So I've heard that when you use the genetically modified seeds, etc., you cannot reuse the seeds.
Yes,
In the
yes,
sense that where the crop, you cannot save some crop output and use it in the second cycle.
That is perfect.
But in case of hybrid, my guess is that you can use the seed. So normally the poor farmers in India, what they do is when they grow anything, they keep some part of it for the next cropping cycle.
Yes, yes.
So that kind of, if in hybrid seeds, if they can reuse the seed, then that actually caps the sale of seeds of a company like Kaveri in the next cycle, right? So with all that research and development and investment in brand, etc., once you distribute the seeds in the market, the farmer will keep using that seed. So is that correct assumption?
Yeah. So yes, genetically modified seeds can't be reused. That is well said. In case of hybrid, what I have understood from channel checks and experts in the field is you can use it for up to 2 to 3 cycles, because the efficiency of the seeds goes down by the every passing year. So maximum you can use is up to 3 times. And that's where Kaveri or the innovative player needs to keep inventing new products so that that can sell to the market. So up to 3 cycles, yes, you can use the hybrid, but beyond that you need to repurchase.
So are there no other companies in the listed space?
There are very small companies. Nath Biogenes is there, JK Agri is there, but those are very small companies to be covered.
There was a Godrej company also.
Godrej Agrovet, yeah. So
Yeah.
they are not predominantly in seeds, but they have 6 sub-segments within the agri space. So again, it becomes like fragmented company to track.
Thank you very much.
Just to add to what Abhishek said, on the urea side, government will give subsidy. So they have a cost of production of urea for each plant. And the difference between the market price and that cost of production for a plant. Now that cost of production is not a very dynamically moving thing. It's been assigned based on whatever legacy formula that they have at that point of time. So that difference is what they will give as subsidy to individual plants. Now, in an ideal environment, it would have meant that these would be a fixed ROE kind of a business. But the key issue has been that subsidy has been extremely cyclical and delayed historically. So, more than the subsidy, it is the fact that you have immense working capital or borrowings on your balance sheet that destroys the ROE for these companies. So, if you got subsidy immediately, then probably the ROE for these companies looked very different. And which is why whenever you had these DBT kind of debates, or the thought that there will be a DBT coming in, that is why there's a lot of euphoria, because that means then you will not have to use working capital to finance that subsidy. You will immediately get that money. But so far that has not been very effective.
So basically, in the Debtors Day slide, what you have showed in fertilizer segment. So in case of Coromandel, which is a private company, the number of days are reducing. In case of PSU companies, they are going up. So largely it is just because of subsidies which have been paid, or non-urea can be another impact.
So, hello. In case of, is it audible? Yeah. So in case of Coromandel, they don't have any urea-based production. So they are largely into nutrient-based fertilizers and some bit of 20% around crop protection chemicals. In mostly what you see higher data days for the PSU companies. And those are the companies which are largely urea-based production and hence largely subsidized dependence also. Coromandel has never been, among the last 10 years at least, they have never been a urea-based company. So that's the reason that has always remained lower. But for other companies also, at least the working capital days have come down because in last 3 years, the distribution of subsidy has been very good.
Any questions from the Zoom audience? I think there's only one right towards me. No. Cool. Thanks then. Thanks, Abhishek. Thank you, everyone.
Whenever things got rough, I always remember what my father used to say.
Running a business does test a man, my son. There are ups and downs, glorious highs, and sometimes a low that leaves you feeling defeated.
The character of a man and the character of a business are not very different, are they?
Yes, but when the chips are down, we must stand up, dust ourselves off, and motor on.
Volatility. It's a funny thing. It makes you question yourself and wonder if you've made all the right decisions.
Sure, you can question some of your decisions, but stay steadfast on your goals.
Dad always said, there are no shortcuts and no quick profits.
There are no free lunches, are there? There is only one
Right way.
At PPFAS, we think like Rahul and his father. That volatility is a fact of running a business. And buying equity shares is like owning a part of that business. We use value investing principles to manage your money. This means we invest in the right businesses at reasonable prices and for a longer term.
PPFAS Mutual Fund. There's only one right way. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.